Please give a very warm welcome for Joshua David Stein.
Addressing that deeper level of rejection, I started thinking of rejection, and what I remembered was, of course, my mother. So I grew up in suburban Philadelphia, Abington. No, doesn't deserve it. And my parents got divorced in 1989, but when they were together, we always used to eat out. Every night we went to Fiesta Pizza a lot, and we ate a lot of pizza steaks, we ate a lot of pizzas, we ate a lot of cheesesteaks. But after my dad left, my mom kind of concocted this four-meal plan where we would eat the same 4 meals every week. And I know it's a 7-day week, so sometimes we'd eat the same meal twice a week. And that lasted from like 89 until I went to school in 99. So for a decade, we ate the same 4 meals. And they were applesauce meatloaf, which was like a mound of 2 pounds of moist ground beef with a baby face size glob of applesauce in the middle. That's not great. Buttermilk chicken, which was buttermilk and soggy chicken and buttermilk. Tofu from her days as a hippie, and that was tofu with soggy tofu and soy sauce. But the worst thing, and this is something I ate for a decade, twice a week, was something called company cream tuna. I don't know if you guys know what company cream tuna is, but well, I don't know if it started always, but it's the tuna in a can. You put in like a cup of sour cream, like half a stick of butter, almond slices, and parsley, and that's what it is. And it's disgusting. It's like if fish could throw up into their fish hands and throw up back in their mouth and then throw it up again, that would be company cream tuna. So I hated it. And I kind of feel that eating something for a decade that you hate must affect you in some way. Because to get to the point, I rejected, just so everyone's clear, I rejected company cream tuna. I mean, that's alright. But at the same time, I also try to intellectualize things and not deal with them emotionally. It's kind of like what I do. So instead of addressing the deeper issues of rejection, I thought I would give you a history of company cream tuna. Which is actually more interesting than anything that's going on in my personal life. And amazingly, I got to talk to some really great people doing this piece. So I wanted to know the history of tuna, which I had never imagined being something that anyone would ever care about, but actually someone does. Andrew F. Smith, who's a food historian and the author of, does someone know him?
Yes.
Oh yeah, he's great. I talked to him yesterday. Yeah.
He's one of my teachers and mentors.
Yeah, he's amazing. Anyway, yeah, he's amazing. He wrote American Tuna, The Rise and Fall of an Improbable Food. It's a really great book. It's kind of like one of those books where it's like random noun A, and then like an improbable history of like phrase, like oyster, an improbable history of New York City or salt or whatever. Anyway, so no one ate tuna in the 20th century. Before the 20th century, no one caught it in America. People thought it was a trash fish. It was too oily and too fishy, and there were a ton of other fishes to catch. And in 1903, they started canning tuna, but no one would ever, parenthetically, this is how company cream tuna came into my life. That's my point. And also to avoid talking emotionally. So in 1903, people started canning tuna, but people still would eat it because they thought it was too fishy, oily. There are other alternatives and it's a trash fish. And there's a lot of dark meat too, which is more flavorful, but people didn't like it. Anyway, in like 1910, they started realizing that you could take out all the dark meat and only have white meat. They would press out all the fish oil and add olive oil. So it was just like bland, couch filling from the sea. But of course they called it chicken of the sea. And that's where that came. But how would you get people to buy it if you had no recipes? So then what they started doing, and this is all from Professor Smith, who was great. Then they started developing recipes. But what they would actually do is they would just take chicken recipes, take out the chicken, and put in the tuna. So you have, instead of cream chicken on toast points, you would have cream tuna on toast points. Instead of chicken salad, you would have tuna salad. And so that's when the idea, the horrible, obscene idea of cream tuna came into existence. But still, that was only cream. And the reason why they had cream on toast points was because they didn't have preservatives in the bread. So the bread would dry out, and then you would add the cream, put it on toast points, and it would soften it up. Anyway, so that's how tuna came to be. In the 30s and 40s, it became really popular because it was cheap. Okay, so that's how tuna came. Then what about company cream tuna? So I talked to my mom, who's watching now, and is not into this story, for obvious reasons. Although maybe she is. And she said she got it out of the 1968 Better Homes and Gardens cookbook, which is cool. But the coolest part of that is that you can actually call someone at Better Homes and Gardens, like I did, Jan Miller from Des Moines, Iowa, whose job it is to go through the recipes and research the recipes. And so I called Jan, she was very nice, and she did a lot of research for me. And it turns out that 1968 was the 8th edition of Better Homes and Gardens. That was the first time company cream tuna came into existence. But that wasn't the first time that was the first time it was in the cookbook, but it wasn't the first time it existed. It was actually in a March 1961 magazine, issue of Better Homes and Gardens, and it came from a recipe from a woman named Mrs. Maurice Corson, from Sepulveda, California, which I think is still just part of LA, but it wasn't clear. And it was a recipe that she had created, she had sent it in, and she had won a prize. And then in 1968, they thought, oh, this is such a great dish, they were going to put it in the cookbook. But the other thing about company cream tuna to mention real quick is when I was growing up, I had no idea what the company was, because it was just us. There was no one else. My sister, me, and my mom. I thought it was also my mom used to call it cream company tuna. And I was like, did you cream the company? Or is it company tuna? Which obviously I thought was company tuna. But it turns out company cream tuna is for company. It was like a thing that people would serve to other people who they like. Which seems insane to me. But this is Maurice Corson. Served it on silver chafing dishes, and it's a very, elegant, here's my tuna. Anyway, so there's not that many Maurice Corsons extant Maurice Corsons. And since it was from 1961, I didn't think he would be around anyway. There's actually only one, and his name's Rabbi Maurice Corson, and he had a congregation out in LA. Which is where they lived when she submitted this recipe, and he's still alive, and he's the Rabbi Emeritus at the Wexner Foundation, which is a foundation promoting Jewish stuff, promoting Jewish Jews, and I sent him an email. He has a Roadrunner email address, and I just said, hi, I think you're, and I didn't have the heart to say I was telling a story of dishes that I hate, and I would like to use a dish that maybe your wife made. So I said I was doing a story about food. And today, actually, a couple of hours ago, I got a phone call from a Massachusetts number, and I picked it up, and it was Ruth Corson. And Ruth Corson is the one, she's still alive, she's the one that invented company cream tuna. And so it's a mystery solved. Unfortunately, the only thing she wanted to talk about is that I'm Jewish. And her husband, Maurice, who is in the vicinity, you know, they're like really old, so they talk to each other like they're all on the phone. Hard to handle. Anyway, she just said, "Oh, Joshua David Stein, you're a Jew." I said, "Yes." That would be too good. And she wanted me to send her the article that I'm writing in the National Observer about the dish that I love, but that's not happening, so I couldn't do it. So that was maybe not super climactic, that interaction with Ruth Corson, except to realize that she does exist, and she was once a lonely rabbi's wife, a young lonely rabbi's wife, and now she's an older lonely rabbi's wife living in Massachusetts. But to wrap up, fuck it. So, if you look at Better Homes and Gardens now, there's no company cream tuna. According to Jan Miller, in 1989, which was the 11th edition of Better Homes and Gardens, every year they go through and they cull out the recipes that are no longer appropriate or fitting. And in 1989, they took out company cream tuna and they reinserted, or they put in something called crab mornay, which is basically the same thing just with crab. But I have to say, 1989 was a bad year for me. It was a bad year for company cream tuna. It's when my father left, and it was when Better Homes and Gardens dropped company cream tuna. So even though I came to that dish through Rejection, I realized that company cream tuna is a company that I'd like to keep. Thank you.